business at the King's College. And I am going to give you a little review of ABC's Shark Tank. I watched it for the first time from beginning to end last week, and I was absolutely fascinated. Everybody told me, oh, you should watch it. And I thought, oh, it's just a scam. No, it's actually very interesting. And one of the things I really wish I had the chance to do was to get with these small business owners before they go on the show. Because if I did, I think there would be better outcomes. But anyway, I want to talk to you today about one small business owner in particular, and his name is Joe. And Joe was a salesman for a company called Astor & Black. And the company was bought by private equity people. It went under. It's unclear as to why, but they make custom men's suits out of Columbus, Ohio. And Joe was one of their salespeople. And he bought the business. He basically bought the inventory. He probably bought the customer list. He bought some of the infrastructure, namely the website and their back-end computer system, sales system, which is not a small thing, by the way. And he went on Shark Tank, and he wanted to get an investment of about $360,000 for a 6% stake in the business. And it was really fascinating watching this guy. First of all, you got to give him an E for enthusiasm. You got to see he came out there like gangbusters. And, you know, the sharks were like, oh my gosh, what just happened? Very enthusiastic about his product and about his brands. He not only bought Astor & Black, but he opened up another brand called Bello, Verde. And I wrote a whole long blog post about it, which you can read on Best Small Biz Help. But one of the things that I thought was really fascinating, I did some research on Joe. Joe was one of their top salespeople. He had great relationship, and still does, with a lot of the clients for Astor & Black. And these are, you know, chairman level, very senior executive level people. They have a lot of disposable income. He's out of the Columbus, Ohio market. And I will tell you that the people who live on the coasts do not understand the Midwest. They really don't. They don't think anybody has any money in the Midwest, which is ridiculous, but there's a tremendous geographic bias. So one of the sharks said, well, you know, I can throw a dart at any major city and I, you know, can find custom tailors, which is true. But you can find a lot of custom tailors in Columbus, Ohio. So the question really on the table is there enough demand for $2,000 suits in Columbus, Ohio? And the short answer is there is, because this guy's already generating $2 million in revenue a year. So some of the questions that the sharks asked were very interesting because they were risk related. If you're an investor, a private equity investor, from all the people that I have spoken to, you're looking for a 20-fold return in 2 years. That to them is a smashing success. So if they're investing, let's say $350,000 in a business, they want $7 million back in 24 months, which is a staggering return. And they want that because only 1 in 200 investments really shoot for the fences. So even the smart guys only really hit it big once every 200 times, which is 0.5% of the times. So when it does hit big, they want really, really big returns. So at any rate, he's all excited about his brand. Joe's out there. He's all excited about his brand. And a couple of people were out right away. Lori Greiner, Mark Cuban, they were out right away because they said, you know what, this isn't my sweet spot. I don't really know anything about custom tailoring. Lori Greiner's genius is really about new product development. If you notice on QVC, she sells very interesting things, unusual things, and things that QVC develops especially for their audience, and that's her point of difference. So this was an area that really was not well suited for what she does. And at one point she says on the show, you don't know what I do. And it's true. The boys really don't understand what she does, but she's very, very successful at it. Mark Cuban got out also because he said, you know, this isn't my sweet spot. But the one guy who stepped up to the plate was Damon John, and I give him a lot of credit. First of all, he knows a lot about menswear, about selling to men, distribution schemes, because he built a billion-dollar business with FUBU. So he knows that space very well. So he counters Joe's offer of 350 or 360. He said, I'll give you 360. And he was very funny, actually. He said, I'll give you a deal that's so sweet it'll give you cavities. I thought, wow, that's really good poetic, poetic usage. Anyway, he said $360,000 for a 33% stake in the business. And that 33% stake is actually, it's a minority stake. And I was surprised that he was willing to give up majority influence. 51% would have been majority influence. Because usually if you're putting in a big chunk of money, you want to be able to call the shots. So he wasn't doing that, and I give him credit for that. But really on the table, it wasn't so much the amount of money that they were, arguing about, because the money was about the same, and it wasn't even about the percent of ownership. If you read between the lines, the difference between the two offers, right, what the owner wanted and what the investor was willing to give wasn't the percent ownership. It was how they valued the business. And if you look at it, a 6% stake, $360,000 for a 6% stake is roughly a $6 million business. So what Joe was saying, without actually coming out and saying it, is he thought Astra and Black and Bello Verde together was worth $6 million. And what he was essentially doing is he was taking his annual revenues and he was multiplying it by 3. And he thought $6 million was a reasonable number. Damon John, on the other hand, said $350,000, $360,000 for a 33% stake. So he was essentially saying, I think this business is worth a little over $1 million, not $6 million. And they never really had the conversation about that, which is why I'm doing this video, because I think it's material. So if you're a small business owner and you're looking for financing, you need to hear what the investor's really saying and what he's asking. So what Damon John was essentially doing, he was saying, okay, you got $2 million in revenues a year. That's great, but revenues are top line, not bottom line. I care about bottom line. I care about what's available after all your expenses and taxes and fixed overhead. Those expenses are high. Wages are going to be high. You've got skilled labor and all of that. So even if Damon John gave Joe the benefit of the doubt and said, okay, on $2 million, roughly, let's say, I don't know, 10, 15% of that drops to the bottom line, which would be really, really good in a business like this, then essentially what Joe is making is somewhere around $350,000 a year in net income after all expenses. So John is saying 3 times net income is $1 million, not 3 times revenue of $6 million. But finish the analysis, okay, because this is where it gets really interesting. So David John says, I'll give you $360,000 for a 33% stake, minority stake, on what he thinks is $1 million business. But if he wants a 20-fold return, he thinks that in a couple of years, his stake is going to be worth $7 million. If his stake is worth $7 million, then Joe's stake is going to be worth $21 million. So what Damon is basically saying to this guy is, you don't have a $6 million business right now, but I think you could have a $28 million business in the not too distant future. And Joe just totally missed that beat, which is the most important part of the analysis. And the thing that's like driving me crazy as I'm watching Shark Tank is this guy, Damon John, could absolutely have delivered the distribution to get there. So what I basically said was, Joe was upset and he walked off in a big huff. He did not realize that Damon John was giving him a $21 million gift and he couldn't see it. So I'm Professor Dawn Fotopoulos. Thanks so much for joining me. Join me next week because I'm going to take another one of those wonderful, courageous small business owners and I'll do a debrief for you next week. Thanks for joining me.